Well, hello there. We're back, and you're back if you have been with us before, and if you're not, welcome. I'm Charlie Bloom.
Linda Bloom here.
And we are here to talk to you today for about half an hour on a subject that is near and dear to our hearts. But first, we just want to remind you that we are here doing Bloom Talks every Thursday at 12:30 Pacific time. And we welcome any input, comments, or questions that you may have while we're talking, and we will respond as best we can to them during the time that we are together. So we were not, as you may have noticed, we weren't together last Thursday, and you probably know why, because it was our favorite holiday, which is Thanksgiving. And we're going to talk a little bit about being with families today on holidays when there are gatherings, particularly during what's known as the holiday season, which kind of started last week and it'll go until after New Year's. So there's lots of what we call opportunities to practice some of the things that really seem to promote goodwill, happiness, and joyful connection during these times. You may have noticed there are also opportunities for different kinds of experiences, like opportunities to experiencing dealing with differences, opportunities to notice when you're still holding grudges or what we call incompletions from the past, opportunities to handle them in a way that they're no longer incomplete, opportunities to connect to people that maybe you haven't spent much time with for a while, maybe since the last major holiday, or maybe in the last 10 years ago. So we're here to talk about some of those opportunities and to really look at how and why these times can be challenging for so many of us, and how we can deal with those challenges in ways that really can take us from feeling disappointed or upset or hurt or angry or something that we would prefer not to feel, to experiences that we really do want to have. Mm-hmm. Like gratitude and connection and appreciation and openness and forgiveness. Mm-hmm. So welcome.
Yes, I'd like to welcome you also. I want to wish you a very happy holiday season. And it is our intention, by doing the exploration of this talk today, to position you well, to support you to position yourself well for making the absolute best of the holiday season. Because sometimes people go to extraordinary lengths to travel long distances and spend a lot of money to be with people that they haven't seen for a long time. And some of these people in our family, we would not intentionally choose to spend time with, but because they're our blood, and we stand by our family commitments, that we go to those lengths and we spend the money and travel and tie up our time. And it's fraught with opportunity. Charlie's using this word opportunity. It's fraught with opportunity for breakdown, and it's fraught with opportunity for breakthrough. We are wishing for you that you have breakthroughs, and that you have the most extraordinary holiday season perhaps that you've ever had. And if you're going to see family, to be well prepared to go to see them. That means that you can think about some of the holidays past and pull on what was good about holidays past to see if you can institute some of those things in the present current one. And if there were some breakdowns in holidays past, that you can learn from those about how to do it better, more gracefully, to keep your center, to not have reactivity, because everybody's got some more or less unfinished business with family of origin. There are sore spots left over from childhood. I'll give you just a few examples. The baby in the family, you might be midlife person now in your 40s, and you're still treated like the baby in the family that has to be told what to do. Maybe you're the firstborn in the family, and you always carried a lot of responsibility. You were the big brother or the big sister, and there may be a lot expected of you because they're in that old pattern of seeing you as the together one or the one that can be counted on. And it may irritate you to still be held more responsible than other children in the family. Maybe you were ignored in your family, and any slight can bring up old pain from the past about when they didn't really see you or hear you or want to know what your needs were. And so just be on the alert that some old unfinished business could come up. If there's alcohol, a lot of alcohol imbibed at the gathering, people tend to lose some of their inhibitions and say and do things that can be provocative, irritating. You might find yourself angry at somebody. And sometimes people are very free with their judgments. They throw their opinions, political opinions, their judgments about the way you eat or the way you conduct your life or the way you discipline your children or don't. And sometimes people are very free with their unsolicited advice. There is no shortage of the ways in which people may irritate us at the family gathering. If we can keep our self-restraint and our dignity about us, we don't have to be reaction machines that make a difficult situation even more challenging. So it has to do with not being blindsided by it when you're at the gathering, but to have some heads up, have some consciousness that this is not a remote possibility. And if you've prepared and you don't need it, that's all to the good. Maybe things will go very smoothly. Maybe there won't be a tendency to slide into the negative, and you'll stay at least neutral and into the plus. But we want you to give a little thought to preparing and setting an intention to take the family gathering and your experience of it into the plus as far as you can, by being responsible, by being patient and tolerant, by having some forgiveness, and not being reactive to anything that might occur.
Wow, that sounds like a pretty formidable challenge to do all that stuff. So one of the things that you might want to prepare yourself for is the possibility that you may not do everything that you think you should do, or say everything that you think you should say in the proper way, in terms of not only your opinion, but other people's opinion. So cut yourself some slack. And we want to say a little bit about why it is that these gatherings can be so challenging. Like Linda said, we are very apt to get triggered. And what we mean by that term is that our old defensive, controlling, protective patterns of behavior and interaction that we may have developed a long time ago can very easily get activated when we're among the people with whom we used to practice this stuff on a daily basis. Now, they may not be in our lives all that frequently anymore, but when we do see them, it's like a knee-jerk reaction that we automatically become an 8-year-old again, or we become a high school rebellious person, or we take on that way of being that had been so familiar to us in the past, just being around these people. And it's not necessarily all difficult things that come up. I mean, some of it maybe we can also fall into a feeling of real gratitude to be close to people that we've missed, that we don't get to be around that much. So all kinds of feelings are going to come up, and we're likely to be in reaction to those things, and do some of the things that we might have done years ago. And even though we're no longer the baby in terms of years, I mean, we still are always going to be the youngest if we were the youngest then, but we're going to be much more inclined to get activated in the ways that we were in those times. Mm-hmm. So I want to say one thing about this word intention that Linda used, to set an intention, which really should happen before we even begin the event, before we even go to the event. That to really get clear about what it is that we want to experience during this time. What is it that we want to have happen for ourselves? And what is it we're hoping that other people will experience out of their connection with us, out of our participation in this event? To really be proactive about this rather than just going, with the hope that, hope that things go okay, and, hope that we don't get into any arguments or whatever, but to be really clear, not about what we don't want to have happen, like I intend to not argue, or I intend to not drink too much. But to be clear about what is it that I do want to experience? Mm-hmm. I want to experience connection. I want to experience being in a clear mind. I want to experience gratitude. I want to experience a sense of connection with other people. These are just some examples that we can bring as an intention to this event.
Once I got to the point where I felt enough confidence to be able to be in a leadership role, to be responsible, to be purposeful about creating the kind of family gathering that I wanted to have, I had a feeling of personal power, efficacy. Do you know that I had an impact? And so I invite all of you to tap into that part of yourself that knows that you're an important member in the clan, and that there are other people who have a similar intention to yours, that they want to have a good experience of being together. That's why the clan gathering got called. And I'd like to give you an example of something in my history that tripped me up for a long time from having the satisfying gathering that I wanted to have. Historically, as a child, I was goody two-shoes, tried to fly under the radar, not get in trouble, and do everything right, be the good student and not talk back. And when I grew up and became an adolescent, a young adult, a college student, I found my voice, I found my personal power, and I thought, I've got to speak up. It's part of my, journey. I have to go on the record. I have to say when things are not suited to me. And people ended up feeling criticized. They didn't really understand, where's that pleasant girl that I used to know. And it took me a while, actually, I think it was almost in midlife, before I understood that by being silent and practicing committed listening, many of the things that were being said I didn't agree with, but my silence didn't mean that I agreed. It just means that I'm respectful listening to the other person's point of view. So I didn't have to rebel. I didn't have to correct. I didn't have to interrupt, that I could just practice listening. My attitude was, yes, I hear you. Inside myself, I was saying, I really don't agree with what you're saying. I will not sell myself out any longer in an attempt to get along, but I don't have to fight you. You may have to take another occasion, not at the family gathering, where you want to straighten out some old unfinished business, but you might not want to do it on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. Maybe you want to save that for another time and just practice being present with your patience, your forgiveness, your understanding, and your tolerance. And that might be the greatest gift that you give the people at the gathering and yourself, so that when it's over, you can come away feeling like, I did keep my dignity and I kept my cool.
Yeah. Speaking of intentions, that one, being present, that's a great intention to bring, to include that commitment in your self-intention statement. And, being present means more than just bringing your body there, but it means that you're bringing your full awareness to each moment as best you can, as much as possible, that you're really showing up with a desire to have your presence be experienced by other people. And so you're paying attention, you're listening, you're connected not only to yourself, but you're connected to other people as they're speaking, and you're listening from a perspective of wanting to learn about who this person is and how it is that they see things. And you don't have the need that we often bring when we get into passionate dialogues with people. You don't have the need to be preparing what your rebuttal is going to be to challenge or argue with what they're saying. Even if they say things that are provocative or you don't necessarily agree with, like Linda said, there are more than two options, one being to agree or the other one being to disagree. You can listen, and you don't necessarily have to agree, and you don't have to tell the person that you disagree if you do. Like she said, you can hear something, and inside what you're experiencing is, that's really not how it looks to me, or that's not how I see it, or that's not my experience. And sometimes you might want to say that, and sometimes you don't have to. Sometimes you can simply acknowledge the other person's saying something, and you can receive it. You can even thank them for letting them know that's where you stand, where they stand, and you don't have to make a point or prove a point or defend a position. Now, for some of us, that's really hard to do, because it's hard to resist that impulse to tell a person what we think is the correct way to do or say or see things. And it can feel like if I don't say anything, they're going to think that I agree with them. Not necessarily.
So let me just clarify here that both Charlie and I come from families that have lots of hotheads that are real strong about their opinions, and they are speaking in an authoritative way about the way they see it is the way it is. So we've had to work a lot with how to keep things.
By the way, if any of our family members are listening to this, she didn't really mean that. So,
Historically, but we have a lot of family gatherings these days, but it's been hard won. Other families, they don't have as many people who are critical and judgmental and opinionated, but they have a sort of a not fulfilling experience at the family gatherings, but it's more about the blahs. They don't get overheated, but there isn't real connecting going on.
Not much juice.
Yeah, and so when we're talking about full presence, we're talking about really showing up and being fully there and inviting people to engage with you. What it doesn't look like is staying glued to the TV. What it doesn't look like is being glued to your phone or your tablet or your laptop. That you leave the tech devices and the other distractions aside temporarily to really show up, to connect. And one of the things that I do now at family gatherings, because there's a bunch of people there, it can be hard to make connections with one person at a time. And I make a concerted, determined, intentional effort to go around to each person at the gathering, every family member, from the youngest, to I'm the oldest, so I start with the young kids first, and I ask about their life, and I share something about my life, and so that to is the foundation. Do you know that connection is? I know I'm going to come away from this family gathering feeling like that was a great holiday because I connected to each person. I showed up and I invited them to show up with me. And sometimes people are a little reticent about doing that. But if we're determined and we keep inviting them and we create the safe space and we show interest and curiosity in who they are these days and what's going on in their life, people will often come and join us in a substantive, meaningful conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we like to distinguish the term conversation from arguments. Not that I'm necessarily opposed to arguing, but what doesn't seem to work for me, and I think for a lot of people, is getting into arguments in which there is really no real openness to accepting or even really hearing the other person's perspective. And there's more of an intention on the part of one or both of us, or one or both people, to coerce the other person into agreeing that we're right, which of course means that they're wrong. And many of us would prefer not to be wrong for a variety of reasons. But to listen and engage in a conversation with the intention to learn something about how this other person sees things. Using politics as an example, somebody can have a certain view politically about a certain politician, and they may be very attached to being right about that. And there may be something in that for us to hear. It doesn't mean that we're necessarily going to be converted to their perspective, but at least we can have some understanding of how they could come to that conclusion. And so not only is it possible that you could learn something that might be useful and beneficial and might actually create a better connection and more understanding between you and the person with whom you're speaking, but it could also be illuminating. It can help us to kind of be more open-minded and more willing to consider things. And hopefully, the more open we are with them, the more likely it is that they won't feel the need to be defensive, mm-hmm. to defend their position. And then they'll be able to kind of hear or be more open to hearing how we see things and why. Mm-hmm. And this is one more thing I want to mention that's not exactly related to this piece, but I think it's important because a lot of couples, when they go to these family gatherings, or to social gatherings in general, sometimes one of them can feel neglected if there are people that you haven't seen for a while and you really want to spend time with them and you want to connect with them. And it's possible that one of you might feel like, hey, you're acting like I'm not even here. And they can feel this way. They may not say it, but they can feel like they would really like to have more connection. And their bid for attention may be very subtle, and you may not pick it up. And even if you do pick it up, you still may not respond to it. So it's helpful before you go, particularly if there's one of you or both of you have a tendency to feel that way sometimes, to talk about that and to maybe even have some kind of a signal to let each other know, mm-hmm. if you're feeling in need of more attention or connection, and to be willing to take the initiative to make that clear to your partner in some way so that you don't build up any resentment.
I totally agree. We got a message on the Facebook feed that Jean is saying hello and happy holidays to you too. I'm so glad you tuned in with us. I wanted to speak just a little bit about pulling into the plus. Of course, we want to stay out of the negative and avoid arguments and disputes, but pulling into the plus, being present is so important, and really tapping into the appreciation and gratitude that we feel for each and every one of our family members. For some people, it would be easy to tap into that. We value them so much. They've nourished us deep in our soul for so many years. As for some people, it's more of a reach. But if we can contact that part of ourselves that appreciates them. And we gift them with that. It's a gift to ourselves at the same time. To say, I'm so glad that you're in my life. I'm so glad that you made the trip to come here to join us. And I know you have a busy life. This was an effort for you to be here. I'm really happy that you're a part of it. I'm glad that you're updating me about what's going on in your life these days. Has to be sincere for it to work. You know, no BS is gonna really do the job. You have to contact that part of yourself that really is happy to see this person. Because sometimes we reunite with relatives that we haven't seen for a very long time, and that they didn't drift off, as happens in so many families. There isn't necessarily a breakdown or an argument or any kind of a thing that causes a schism. It's just that they haven't tended the relationship and people drift off. And our clan can be, you know, all over the country, all over the world, and disconnected. And family connections are so precious. Do you know they really are a good jumping off place in our life to take risks, to try things that are creative, a little bit outside the box, and a landing place to come back on if we have disappointments, when we pit ourselves against challenges. And these are people who will celebrate our triumph and our successes with. So to remember to acknowledge the people in our lives.
You know, we're getting to the end of our talk, and I was thinking that it might be nice if you share that story about that we got from Jack.
Oh, I love this story. There was a woman who started to study Buddhism with Jack Kornfield, who's an important teacher to ours. And she was so enthusiastic about the things that she was learning. They touched her so deeply that when she went home for Thanksgiving, she was just enthusing with her parents about all these beautiful loving kindness and mindfulness and forgiveness and all of these things. And the more she talked about the Buddhist principles that she was learning, the more quiet and withdrawn her parents got. But she was doing her mindfulness practice. So when she went home for Christmas, she was very different. These people were Christian, and they were feeling like maybe she was rejecting them and their religion and her heritage with them. And so she told Jack, after she finished up both of the vacations, the first time when I went to visit my family, I spoke about Buddhism. When I went home for Christmas, I was the Buddha. So she learned from her experience how to put the correction in, and she ended up having a fine connection with her family on the Christmas holiday.
So you don't have to be the Buddha. It is possible to have a great time and create that with other people without actually being Buddha. Uh-huh. But you can bring some of those qualities that we've been talking about into those experiences, and it can make a huge difference. And even if there's been a lot of space in between the two of you since your last encounter, even if there is some unfinished business, a lot of that can dissolve in the face of appreciation, gratitude, forgiveness, and acknowledgement.
So if you're thinking right now of a friend who may be going to a family gathering, maybe it's not you. Maybe you have somebody who's dear to you who may be going to a family gathering where it might get a little hairy. Tell them about this Facebook Live. Tell them it's in the archives, that they can go to that spot and they can hear our talk and help prepare them to have a fabulous holiday.
So don't forget to tune in next week. We will be here 12:30 Pacific time, same place. And next week, we're going to let you in on a big secret, which is the answer to the question, what is the greatest gift that you can give your partner? So don't miss it. Adios.